Edward Stevens, once a respected name in the business world, now finds himself in unfamiliar and humiliating territory. With a worn janitor's uniform, he navigates the hallways of the law firm where he works, a shadow of the man he once was. His countenance is marked by sadness, a reflection of the loss of his wife, Anna, to a cruel disease that consumed all their savings in expensive and ineffective treatments. Mr. Stevens, please remember to clean the conference room today. The receptionist says with distant sympathy, unaware of the man's story who now collects garbage and cleans windows. Edward nods with a faint smile. Of course it will be done, thank you. His voice, once confident in business meetings, now sounds soft and resigned. As he cleans, he remembers Anna. They used to dream together, plan for the future. Now he struggles to find purpose, to understand how fate can be so cruel. The pictures of happiness in his mind painfully contrast with the reality of his current life. At the end of the day, exhausted, he sits on a bench in the park, watching people pass by. Anna, how I wish you were here, he murmurs to himself. You always knew what to do. Memories of Anna are both a comfort and a torment. She was his rock, his partner, and without her everything seemed senseless. Medical bills had devoured their savings and the life insurance denied due to bureaucratic technicalities, leaving him with nothing but debts and despair. As Anna's treatment dragged on, Edward had to cut expenses and eventually had to sell his company and find a job to try to keep up with household bills. And after Anna's passing, he remained in the job as it was his only means of livelihood. Then he rises with the determination of a man who has everything to regain. I need to do this for her, for us, he thinks. Anna would believe in me. Returning home to a small, worn-out rented residence, Edward is confronted with memories of a happier past. Photos of trips, shared smiles, moments that now seem to belong to another world. Sitting at the dinner table with Anna's photo by his side, he promises to her and to himself, I will rise again, Anna. For you, for everything we live through, I one give up. This moment marks not only the end of a day but the beginning of a journey for a man who despite adversity decides to face life with resilience and hope. In the heart of the city stood an imposing building of glass and steel where the law firm Fisher Associates occupied the highest floors with a panoramic view of the metropolis. In this prestigious setting, Edward Stevens worked silently, distant from the glamour and power that exuded from the office corridors. Led by the influential couple Gregory and Meredith Fisher, the firm was a symbol of success and respect in the legal community. Edward, in his modest uniform, contrasted with the expensive suits and elegant dresses that passed by him. He moved with almost invisible discretion, a shadow among the mahogany desks and shelves filled with law books. That morning, his routine led him to the anteroom of the great Gregory Fisher, a luxurious space preceding the lawyer's private office. While wiping the coffee tables and arranging the law magazines, Edward heard muffled sounds coming from Gregory's office. Curious and concerned that someone might need help, he approached the partially open door. What he saw next left him paralyzed. Gregory, in an intimate and compromising moment with a young woman who was not Meredith. Edward instinctively recoiled, but the creaking of the floor betrayed his presence. Gregory, surprised and alarmed, disentangled himself from the young woman and stared at Edward with an expression that mixed anger and panic. Gregory, what's going on? The young woman looked confused, hastily adjusting her dress. Edward, this is not what it looks like. Gregory began, his voice trembling. Edward, still in shock, stammered. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just doing my job. You didn't see anything here, understand? Gregory advanced, the authority in his voice making Edward step back. This stays between us. If a word of this leaks out, I guarantee you'll regret it. Edward, fearing the consequences of his accidental discovery, nodded quickly and left the room, as this job is his only means of livelihood. But his heart was racing. He felt trapped in a web of secrets and lies, a reality far from the justice and integrity that the law firm aimed to represent. As he returned to the corridor, the image of Gregory, A man he respected entangled in a scandal wouldn't leave his mind. How can I keep this a secret? Edward thought, feeling the weight of the discovery and the moral implications it carried. Now tell us here in the comments, if you were Edward, would you tell Meredith about the affair that Gregory, your boss, is having? Or would you simply pretend that nothing happened to keep your job? Would you struggle between job security or a clear conscience with your morals and ethics intact? On that night, after the incident at the office, Edward could barely sleep, tossing and turning in bed as images of Gregory's illicit encounter haunted him. Dawn brought an unexpected invitation, a message from Gregory requesting an urgent meeting at a discreet cafe near the office. Anxious and worried, Edward arrived at the appointed place, finding Gregory sitting alone at a corner table. The lawyer, usually confident and imposing, seemed restless, fidgeting with his coffee. "Edward, thank you for coming," Gregory began, avoiding eye contact. "About what happened yesterday. I need your discretion." "Sir, I have no intention of discussing it," Edward replied, his voice filled with uncertainty. Gregory sighed deeply, glancing around before continuing. "I know you're a man of principles, Edward, and I respect that. That's why I'm willing to offer you $15,000 to ensure this stays between us." Edward widened his eyes, shocked by the magnitude of the offer. "$15,000, he repeated, his mind spinning with the sum that could drastically change his current situation. "Yes, and I assure you it will solve many of your problems," Gregory insisted, sensing Edward's hesitation. "Think of it as a gesture of gratitude for your loyalty and silence." Edward looked at Gregory's face, trying to discern any sign of regret or remorse, but found only a calculating demeanor. He thought of his debts, the overdue rent, the food he could barely put on the table. I accept," Edward finally said, his voice almost a whisper. "But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it out of necessity." Gregory nodded, relieved, passing an envelope under the table. "You're making the right choice, Edward. No one needs to know about this, and your job remains the same." Leaving the cafe with the heavy envelope in his pocket, Edward felt a mixture of relief and disgust. The money was a salvation, but the price that came with it was a stain on his conscience. Is it worth it? He wondered. The morality of the decision weighing on his heart. Night fell over the city as Edward walked slowly home, the envelope containing $15,000 weighing in his pocket like lead. The noise of cars and the chatter of people around him seemed distant, muffled by the whirlwind of thoughts consuming him. Upon arriving at his small and modest apartment, Edward sat at the kitchen table, the envelope still sealed before him. His hands trembled slightly as he touched the paper. "This could solve so many problems," he muttered to himself, thinking of the overdue bills and the constant struggle to stay afloat. But then, the image of Gregory and the young woman returned to his mind, bringing with it a wave of discomfort. "How can I accept this money knowing where it comes from? This is essentially a bribe," he reflected. Feeling a twinge of guilt, Edward got up and began pacing back and forth, an internal debate raging within him. "Anna always said to do the right thing, no matter how difficult," he recalled. His voice choked with the memory of his wife. "She would be disappointed if I accepted this dirty money." He stopped, looking at a photo of Anna on the wall, her sweet and comforting smile. "But Anna also wouldn't want to see me suffering like this, struggling to survive," he argued with himself, feeling the weight of the reality of his situation. Edward sat down again, picking up the envelope and opening it slowly. The bills seemed to beckon to him, promising relief and security. "This is just a temporary help. I can use this money to get back on my feet," he tried to convince himself. But deep down, he knew that accepting the money meant compromising his own values. "I've always strived to be an upright, honest man. This goes against everything I believe in," he admitted aloud, the battle between necessity and ethics tearing at his heart. Edward spent hours in that internal struggle, the envelope open in front of him. The money was an almost irresistible temptation, but with each passing moment, the voice of his conscience grew louder, reminding him of who he truly was and what truly mattered. However, Edward still had many debts from Anna's treatment, and this would be a way out to solve his problems. So even though he knew it was against his principles, he succumbed to the situation. The months passed after the bribe Edward had received. And on a day that started like any other, Edward was absorbed in his work, the sound of the vacuum filling the law office. As he cleaned, he noticed a palpable tension in the air. Furtive glances and hushed whispers among the employees signaled that something was amiss. At the center of this whirlwind of murmurs was Meredith Fisher, co-founder of the firm and Gregory's wife. She walked through the corridors with a severe expression, a storm about to erupt. The doors to Gregory's office closed abruptly behind her, and what followed was a tense silence, punctuated by occasional raised voices. Edward, trying to remain oblivious, continued his work, but his heart raced, anticipating the worst. It didn't take long for the worst to happen. Gregory emerged from his office with a somber expression, calling Edward into a private room. "Edward, we have a problem." Gregory began, his voice cold and calculating. "I've been informed that money has disappeared from my office. Unfortunately, all evidence points to you." Edward, shocked and confused, replied, "Sir, I would never do such a thing. I haven't even entered your office since." His voice trailed off, realizing the trap he was falling into. "It doesn't matter." Gregory interrupted. "The circumstances are what they are. I'm sorry, Edward, but you're fired. Security will escort you out." Edward, still stunned, tried to protest, but the words wouldn't come. "This isn't fair," he managed to say finally. "I'm not a thief." Gregory, undisturbed, simply nodded to security. Edward was escorted out of the office, each step an echo of the injustice he was suffering. His heart was heavy not only from the false accusation and the loss of his job, but also from the cruel irony of being punished for a secret he had worked so hard to keep. As he walked down the street, the reality of his deteriorating financial situation hit him like a punch. Without a job, without prospects, and now marked with a theft accusation, Edward found himself in an abyss of despair, with the waves of injustice threatening to swallow him whole. He began to think about how challenging it would be to find another job after being accused of theft. Moreover, the money he had received in exchange for his silence about his boss's case had been used to pay off all the remaining debts from his wife's treatment. As a result, he had no more money and no means to support himself on the cold and grey morning that followed his unfair dismissal. Edward found himself wandering the bustling streets of the city, a place that once symbolized opportunity and now seemed like a labyrinth of despair. His steps, once firm and confident, were now uncertain and heavy, each one echoing the reality of his desolate situation. Passing by luxurious shops and bustling cafes, he felt a gnawing emptiness in his stomach, not only from hunger, but also from wounded pride. Need led him to a busy street corner where he stood hesitant. Edward never imagined he would find himself in this situation, reaching out to strangers, seeking the compassion that seemed so rare in the world around him. "Please, any help will be welcome," he murmured to passers-by. His voice almost drowned out by the city's noise. Edward avoided people's gaze, feeling every look of disdain or indifference as a stab at his already weakened pride. A lady, elegantly dressed, briefly stopped in front of him, rummaging through her purse. "Here you go, my good man," she said, depositing some coins into his hand. "I hope things get better for you." Edward mumbled a thank you, feeling a mixture of gratitude and shame. "Thank you, I didn't want to be here," he admitted. His voice choked. As the day progressed, Edward reflected on the cruel irony of his fate. He, who had once chaired meetings and made important decisions, now depended on the mercy of others to survive. Every coin received was a painful reminder of how hard he had fallen. "I just need a chance to get back on my feet," he thought to himself, looking at the grey sky. "Just one opportunity to prove that I'm more than this." As night fell, Edward counted the few coins he had collected, the sound of them clinking in his empty tin a reminder of his reality. He knew that the next day would bring more challenges, but in his heart a flame of hope persisted, a burning desire to reverse his fortune and regain the dignity that life had so brutally taken from him. A week later, on a cloudy Tuesday afternoon, as Edward counted the meager coins from another day on the street, his phone, an old and worn-out model, vibrated in his pocket. It was a message from Meredith Fisher, the co of the law firm where he had worked. She asked to meet him at a nearby cafe. Intrigued and slightly apprehensive, Edward agreed, entering the cafe. A cozy and discreetly elegant environment. Edward spotted Meredith sitting at a corner table. She seemed different from what he remembered. There was a softness in her demeanor that contrasted with the image of the ruthless executive he knew. "Edward, thank you for coming," Meredith began, her voice gentle but laden with sadness. "I need to talk to you about something important." Edward sat down, cautious. "Of course, Meredith. How can I help you?" Meredith sighed, looking at Edward with palpable sincerity. "I know about Gregory's affairs, and I know that you knew." Edward felt his heart tighten. "Meredith, I didn't want to get involved. I was just trying to survive." "I understand, Edward. And I want you to know that I'm grateful for your discretion," Meredith said, her eyes meeting his. "You've shown yourself to be a person of character, even in such difficult circumstances." Edward lowered his head, moved and confused. I don't know what to say." Meredith reached out across the table, lightly touching his hand. "I know my husband wrongly accused you, and it cost you your job because he wanted you out of the company so that you wouldn't see anything else. And he knew you were honest, and at some point you would tell me, and that was unacceptable. I want to help make this right." Edward looked at her, incredulous. "You want to help me?" "Yes, I do. I can't undo what happened, but I can offer support now. Financial assistance, references for a new job, whatever you need to start fresh." Edward felt a lump in his throat. Meredith's unexpected kindness was a beacon in his sea of despair. "Thank you, Meredith. This means a lot to me. I just wanted a chance to prove my worth." Meredith smiled. A sad but hopeful smile. "Everyone deserves that chance, Edward. Let's work together to find your way back." Then, Meredith began to expose the corrupt and dishonest actions of Gregory Fisher, which hit the city like a storm, leaving a trail of shock and disbelief in its wake. The news spread quickly. The respected lawyer, a symbol of integrity and success, was now at the center of a scandal that dominated the headlines. The evidence of his transgressions accumulated over the years came to light, exposing a web of lies, fraud, and betrayal. While the legal community and society reacted with outrage and surprise, Edward watched from afar with a mix of relief and sadness. The truth about Gregory had finally been revealed, and it was in the midst of this whirlwind of events that Meredith Fisher, now estranged from her disgraced husband, sought out Edward. They met again at the same cafe, a peaceful refuge amidst the chaos. Meredith then fulfilled what she had promised to Edward, offering financial and legal assistance for him to rebuild his life. "We'll start with a good lawyer to clear your name," Meredith said, determined, "and we will find a job that leverages your skills and experience." Edward nodded, grateful and hopeful. Meredith's kindness was a beacon in the storm, a promise that despite the hardships, there were still people in the world willing to do what was right. After months of struggle and uncertainty, a light began to shine at the end of the tunnel for Edward. Sitting in a minimalist yet elegant office of an attorney specializing in policyholder rights, he anxiously awaited the outcome of a long legal battle. The issue at hand was the life insurance compensation for his late wife Anna, a process that had been unfairly complicated and drawn out. "Mr. Stevens, I have good news," the lawyer, a middle-aged man with a kind yet determined look, said. "We've succeeded. The insurance company has agreed to pay the full compensation for your wife's death and retroactive pension. It's a significant victory." Edward, holding back tears, nodded in gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. This changes everything. You fought bravely, Edward. This compensation is more than deserved. It's your right," the lawyer replied, handing him the documents. Edward looked at the papers, the reality of the moment hitting him. Anna would be happy, he murmured. She always believed in justice. Your wife was a remarkable woman from what you've told me. She would certainly be proud of you, the lawyer said, smiling. With the compensation and the pension, Edward felt that he finally had the opportunity to start fresh, to build a new life away from the adversities that had plagued him for so long. It was more than money. It was a chance to regain his dignity and independence. As he left the office, Edward looked up at the sky, thinking of Anna. I'm going to make this count, he promised, feeling a mix of relief, gratitude, and determination. Now, with the financial resources to support him, Edward began to plan his future. He thought about investing in his education, maybe starting a small business again, or even helping other people who had faced difficulties like his own. The morning sun poured a golden light over the city when Edward found himself meeting with Meredith Fisher again. This time they were in a peaceful park where birds chirped cheerfully, contrasting with the turbulence that had marked their lives in recent times. Meredith, I still don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me, Edward said, his voice filled with gratitude. He was dressed in new clothes, a look of renewal on his face. Meredith smiled, her eyes reflecting the satisfaction of being able to help someone in need. Edward, true gratitude is seeing you reclaim your life. That's enough for me. Edward looked around, taking in the beauty of the morning. Everything feels so different now, like the world has brightened up. Meredith nodded, agreeing with his words. This is your chance to start over, Edward. Leave the past behind and embrace the future with hope. He looked at her, a determination gleaming in his eyes. I'm going to do that, Meredith. I'm going to make the most of this second chance. She smiled again and stood up. That's the spirit, Edward. See this as the beginning of a new journey, full of possibilities. You're stronger than you think, and the world is full of opportunities waiting for you. As they bid farewell, Edward felt a deep sense of gratitude and optimism. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was determined to face each challenge with courage. With Meredith as a beacon of generosity in his life, Edward was ready to forge his own path, filled with hope, gratitude, and endless possibilities. It was the start of a new journey that he would embrace with all his heart. Now, as he had the money to restructure himself, he began taking courses and becoming more qualified, eventually landing a job as a manager in a company. He continued to strive with his goal being to reach the position of CEO of the company. Edward had been through a lot, but his persistence was his ally on the paths he was treading until the next story. Dear viewers, if you enjoyed it, show your support with a like and subscribe for more emotional tales. Thank you.